This is not breaking news. This is not a scandal. This is not about one leader, one country, or one decision. This is about a system that no longer slows itself down. For decades, we were told escalation looks loud. Tanks, missiles, declarations. But the most dangerous failures do not announce themselves. They tighten quietly. They link unrelated actions together. They remove the brakes. What you are watching now is not chaos. It is alignment, a closed system under pressure, an external power setting conditions instead of boundaries, information leaking where silence was once guaranteed. None of this feels dramatic on its own. That is the problem. Because once a system reaches this phase, intent stops mattering. Control becomes distributed, and a single internal decision can trigger consequences no one planned. If you stay with me, you'll see how this mechanism works. Not in theory, but in motion. And once you see it, you won't be able to unsee what comes next. Asterisk, bridge asterisk. To understand why this moment is so unstable, we have to stop looking at people and look at what now holds power. What actually controls this system now is not ideology, not diplomacy, not even military strength. It is dependency, a state that survives by constant motion, money flowing, force being paid, silence being enforced. Opposite that is a power that no longer trades in patience. It does not offer exits. It offers conditions. This is the shift most people miss. Power used to mean restraint. Now it means credibility. The ability to make others believe you will not stop. Inside this system, every actor is boxed in. The state cannot ease pressure without losing control. The external power cannot soften its stance without losing leverage. So the system stops negotiating, it starts reacting. And reaction is faster than thought. This is why personalities don't matter anymore. Once the system crosses this line, decisions are no longer strategic. They are mechanical, asterisk, asterisk. And the most dangerous mechanical change happens slowly, so slowly that almost everyone accepted it as normal. There was a time when escalation required permission. Signals were sent, channels stayed open. Time existed between action and consequence. That time is gone. What replaced it was efficiency. Pressure no longer builds at the edges. It moves through systems instantly. Economic stress becomes political stress. Political stress becomes security action. Security action becomes international consequence. This shift did not arrive with an announcement. It arrived as normalization. Blackouts became routine. Targeted threats became public. Conditional force became casual language. Each step felt manageable, temporary, reversible. But slow change is the most dangerous kind because it teaches everyone to adjust instead of resist. Inside the system, escalation is no longer a decision. It is the default setting. When repression increases, exposure increases. When exposure increases, credibility is tested. When credibility is tested, restraint disappears. Nothing dramatic has happened yet. That's what makes this moment unstable. Asterisk, bridge, asterisk. Because once pressure reaches a certain density, the system doesn't drift forward. It snaps. The shock did not come from the outside. It came from inside the system doing exactly what it was designed to do. Force was deployed. Connectivity was cut. Legal mercy was removed. This was not improvisation. It was protocol. The system responded the way it always responds when it feels cornered. By tightening, by isolating, by treating dissent as contamination. And on paper, it worked. Information slowed, movement fractured, fear spread faster than coordination. But here's the detail that changes everything. The cost was not absorbed quietly. The pressure rebounded, casualties mounted on both sides of the force line. The very tools meant to restore control exposed how fragile that control had become. Because when a system relies entirely on coercion, every act of force becomes a test of endurance. Not morality, endurance. If you're still watching, notice what hasn't happened yet. No collapse, no resolution, just strain. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. This is where most coverage stops. It shouldn't. Asterisk, asterisk, because the real danger isn't the crackdown. It's what the crackdown activates next. Here is the mechanism most people never see. This system does not run on ideology. It runs on payroll. Force is not loyalty. It is a transaction. Money moves in. Obedience moves out. As long as that exchange holds, repression is sustainable. The moment it falters, control becomes theater. This is why economic flow matters more than public opinion. Why production matters more than propaganda. Why silence is purchased, not earned. Inside this structure, pressure is asymmetric. Those at the top absorb almost none of it. Those at the bottom absorb almost all of it. And the middle, security, enforcement, compliance, exists only as long as it is compensated. This is where the system becomes brittle. Because when revenue tightens, the state doesn't reform. It doubles down. It demands more force with fewer resources, more loyalty with less pay, more risk with shrinking guarantees. That imbalance doesn't cause collapse immediately. It causes hesitation. And hesitation inside a coercive system is lethal. Asterisk, asterisk, which is why the next shock doesn't arrive slowly. It arrives fast, and it doesn't ask permission. The pace changes here, shorter windows, fewer buffers, less room to recover. Pressure stops stacking. It starts colliding. Revenue falters. Connectivity breaks and reappears. Force moves without clarity. Orders are given faster than they can be evaluated. Responses happen before consequences are understood. This is what escalation looks like now. Not speeches, not declarations, momentum. Every action creates exposure. Every exposure demands credibility. Every demand narrows the next choice. Inside the system, restraint becomes dangerous. Outside the system, delay becomes weakness. So both sides move, not because they want to, because stopping feels riskier than continuing. This is where mistakes stop being correctable, where one decision cannot be isolated from the next. No one has lost control yet. That illusion still holds. Asterisk, cliff, asterisk. But the system has reached the phase where control can disappear in a single hour. This is where it reaches you, not as a headline, not as a map, as a condition. Because when systems like this tighten, they don't fail evenly. They transfer cost. If you live under it, the rules change without warning. Work becomes risk. Communication becomes exposure. Silence becomes survival. If you watch from the outside, distance disappears. Energy prices wobble. Markets react before explanations exist. Alliances harden. Lines get drawn without being voted on. And the most dangerous part is this. You are asked to adjust as if this were temporary. Just get through the week. Just wait for clarity. Just assume someone is still in control. But systems at this stage don't resolve pressure. They relocate it. From leaders to enforcers, from enforcers to civilians, from civilians to borders. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. If this feels abstract, stay with me. Because what comes next is where personal cost turns structural. Asterisk, bridge, asterisk. Once pressure can no longer be contained inside one country, it doesn't disappear. It moves outward. Once pressure leaves the borders, it doesn't travel as news. It travels as distortion. Supply chains tighten without explanation. Shipping routes reprice overnight. Energy insurance spikes before anyone names the reason. Diplomacy follows late. Markets move first. Allies are forced into alignment not by agreement, but by exposure. Silence becomes a position. Delay becomes a signal. And every external actor starts calculating risk based on incomplete information. This is how local instability becomes systemic liability. No one needs to choose escalation. The system selects it, Because once credibility is publicly tested, every government watching has to ask the same question. What happens if we hesitate? This is where containment fails. Not because borders are crossed, but because consequences are no longer confined. Asterisk, asterisk. And from here, the future doesn't narrow to one outcome. It fractures. From here, the system splits into 3 paths. None of them are clean. The first is adjustment. Pressure is absorbed just enough to prevent rupture. Force stays paid. Connectivity flickers but never fully collapses. External actors step back without declaring retreat. The system survives damaged, tense, permanently unstable. The second path is erosion. Revenue weakens unevenly. Loyalty thins quietly. Orders are followed, but slower. Mistakes accumulate. No single moment looks decisive until suddenly everything feels brittle. And then there is rupture, a stoppage that cannot be reversed, a trigger that cannot be contained, an action taken internally that activates an external response automatically. Not because anyone chose war, because the system removed every alternative. None of these paths announce themselves in advance. They look identical at first, controlled. Manageable, that's what makes this phase so dangerous. By the time the difference becomes visible, choice is no longer available. There is a temptation at the end of moments like this to look for reassurance, for evidence that someone is still steering, that institutions are absorbing the shock, but systems don't announce when they stop listening to intention. They just keep moving. What makes this moment dangerous is not the rhetoric, not the threats, not even the force. It's the automation. Internal actions now trigger external consequences without debate. Credibility substitutes for communication, and delay is treated as failure. When systems reach this phase, the most common mistake is waiting for clarity. Clarity only arrives after cost has already been assigned. You will hear arguments soon about restraint, about escalation, about who crossed which line first. Those arguments come after the mechanism has already engaged. A strong CTA. If you want to understand what happens next, not as opinion, but as structure, stay with this series. Because the next phase doesn't begin with war or peace. It begins when the system proves it can no longer stop itself. And once that happens, the question is no longer if time's consequences arrive. It's who they land on first.